what the heck is actually the Space Apps Challenge? Who knows Space Apps? All right, there's very few of you. So Space Apps is actually the largest hackathon in the world. It happens every October for the last 15 years now. It started during the Obama period, and we had more than 90,000 developers actually solving 30 plus global challenges. And the reason why this exists is it's part of a global initiative for open innovation. We're partnered with more than 15 space agencies around the world to solve global and Earth problems, space and Earth problems. So it's funded through the NASA Earth Science Division. And I used to run the entire program for more than 150 countries. And just to show you guys, this was from last year. We had, the topic is actually the sun touches everything. So every year, topic usually shows up. And then around the world, everybody solves challenges. It also creates a global competition. So each country usually sends up a winner, and then it does a global sort of winner takes all. And the overall winner ends up going to Washington, D.C. to meet the entire NASA folks. And there's a full graduation. It usually happens June. For the hackathon for this year, it's happening on October 4th and 5th at NASA Ames. So if you guys go to nasaspacechallenge.org, search Mountain View location, which we are organizing, you will see and sign up there. We will be there and we'll see you. And just to briefly give you guys some of the challenges, maybe Martina can talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, so each year the NASA is a leading space agency, and a lot of partnership space agencies are developing around 25 or sometimes even more challenges from which you can choose from that are trying to solve the most pressing challenges that we face for Earth and space and deep space in general. So these were the last year's challenges, or it is the last year's?
Yes.
Yeah, so these are the last year's challenges from what I can see from here. Yep. So we have teams come in, they form teams up to 6 people, and they choose a challenge, and the data from NASA and other partners are streamlined for you to easily use, and you also have mentors and judges and support team at hand from which you can learn, network, and ask questions. But they change every year, and that's why this hackathon is so cool. They usually unlock all of the information for the date of the hackathon, so on October 4th and 5th, all of the information are unlocked for you for fairness globally, right?
Yeah, we're just doing a quick intro about this because this is actually part of our kickoff. And so the participants is global. Any age also doesn't matter. We have challenges for kids, middle school, high school, to young professionals, as well as with professional degrees. We are also a global challenge. So this is actually participated by more than 90,000 developers, students around the world, sponsored by different organizations, from space agencies to government officials. It's definitely a really fun experience. So if you haven't done it, feel free to join. We are partnered with a couple of space agencies. You've probably seen some of them. And my role back then was actually the global collaborator. So I actually helped manage partnerships for these, from corporations to government entities as well. And SMEs, basically, anyone from NASA, and local leads. And so that's basically Martina, and I'm going to bring in Bobby as here to kind of briefly introduce who they are and what the local leads are.
So first, hi, I'm Bobby, and I'm excited to share that this year I will be local lead for NASA Space Apps Cleveland, and this year the NASA Space Apps Cleveland will take place online, which makes it more accessible for everyone to join. You can join from coffee shop, from home, or wherever the inspiration kicks in. Before, we were organizing it in partnership with NASA Glenn Research Center, and also I can probably say that 2 years ago we have a global winner that was recognized by NASA itself. So feel free to join the NASA Space Apps Challenge in Cleveland online, and you can register at nasaspacechallenge.com.
And then you can talk about Mountain View.
Yeah. So I'm the local lead of the NASA Space Apps Challenge in Mountain View here at NASA Ames. I previously, Bobby was the part of my co-organizing team, and I was leading 2 locations, but now that we moved here and we're not in Ohio, it made sense that we're here only at Ames. So it leaves, NASA Ames is the only center now that is hosting this hackathon. Usually these are hosted in different venues like this one or universities or whatnot, but the beauty of NASA Ames is that we can have astronauts coming in or center directors or SMEs directly from NASA as a collaboration. So we're hopefully going to get a few of them this year, so you can learn and ask questions and network with them if you join.
Yeah, I'll just skip navigators, but collaborators, we also want local collaborators. So if you're a company that's interested in space and frontier technology, please talk to us. We want to partner and collaborate with you. We work with startups and big enterprise as well, so these are just some of the companies there. Some of our corporate partners are Elastic, Microsoft, Archer Aviation down there in the South Bay. These are just some of the companies, but we would love to get people from other organizations. So if you're into space tech or anything AI and frontier, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We'll be happy to bring you in. And for winning teams, like I said earlier, you get to fly to Washington, D.C. and meet NASA folks, actually. And so these are just some of the photos here. Like I said, it's for all ages, from students to professionals, so any challenges works for everyone. And I'll pass it to Martina, because she actually has the amazing story about International Space Alliance.
To organize events like this, you actually need a body. I come from a country in the Balkan region. It's called North Macedonia, between Greece and Italy. So you can't organize it as Martina, you have to have an entity. So because of necessity, we've actually created an organization called International Space Alliance, and that opened many pathways for us for the future of space and frontier technology innovation. So we are located on 2 locations, one in Europe and one here in the Bay Area with my amazing co-founders, Russell, Joaquin, Bobby right here. And we have really cool things. We actually have several pillars. One of them is Lunar Labs, which Joaquin will talk about. It's an innovation pathway, but we are here as a trusted collaborator of NASA, the Berkeley Space Center, Google, and many other organizations like Microsoft, Elastic, and everyone in between for a lot of events that we do and a lot of building capacity. We build capacity in various pathways. It's not just networking events and informative events. So we have produced courses in the past, programs in the past, you name it. We also have another pillar that's grant writing and research and R&D, research and development. So what we do is we try to partner with leading institutions, space agencies or companies. For example, we've recently applied as ESA to a NASA TRISH grant. Does anyone know what that is? NASA TRISH grant is a grant for human spaceflight. And we have made something called Doc in a Box, which is an AI doctor, and we've applied through partnership pipelines together with Vast Space Exploration, Voyager, Axiom, and other partners in that grant. So we're trying to push the R&D, and I actually I lead the research and development. Russell here is mostly doing the sponsorship packages, and he's the face fronting the events because he's a genius in that. And then Joaquin maybe can talk more about Lunar Labs. But yeah, we are exploring everything here in the Bay Area, and we're set here in the Bay, and we want to build a legacy here. So we have a lot of growing space economy. Now you're hearing all of the AI buzzwords, but space exploration is actually developing along the line. So what we're trying to do is mash both into something innovative that's gonna span out of ESA.
Yeah, I'll also briefly talk about the Berkeley Space Center. So if you guys don't know, NASA Ames is actually building the largest space research facility in North America in partnership with the UC Berkeley. So there is a big fund right now that, Silicon Valley has all AI innovation, but actually the next innovation space for Silicon Valley is actually space. So NASA Ames here in Mountain View is actually going to be the epicenter of that. And so we're part of the ecosystem that we're building. So these meetup that we're doing right now is just one of the few things. We're getting to know who are the startups in that space. We're planning to bring venture capital, people who are in the research as well. As the Berkeley Space Center is being built, we want to create that ecosystem in advance. And actually, yeah. And we don't want to talk about this. This is more of the initiatives that we've done, but I'll pass it around to Joaquin a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I can focus on Lunar Labs as one of the initiatives. I think it is one topic that we're really excited about. We realize that globally there's a lot of research and students, as you see here, even Google was built on PhD students, right? So we want to do and have a pathway on connecting actually academia into innovation and startups. So Lunar Labs is becoming this micro accelerator. We're launching and prototyping a 6-week period of time where we pick globally people in academia, people doing research that have amazing ideas to build products, and we're training them in a 6-week micro accelerator program that then we can feed into the actual accelerator like Y Combinator, Plug and Play, or Village Global. We are experimenting or exploring a way to do with a partner company, Iberia. They are in Europe, but they're building something very interesting. They're using AI to help extend the golden hour. So as you know, people have, when they have some type of trauma, they only have an hours or sometimes minutes of life before any support comes in. So this company, Iberia, is trying to explore hibernation protocols and how hibernation protocols in combination with AI can help people not on space but also on Earth, like dual system in space and on Earth, use this type of technology to increase the golden hour maybe to 2 or 3 hours. So when they don't have access to oxygen or access to primary care, they can live and survive until that help comes. And this is one of the case studies that we're running with Lunar Labs. It's very exciting to hear. As you know, here we have the best accelerators in the world, YC, Anderson Horowitz. We're exploring a way, because there's a lot of people in research and academia that are not ready to completely become entrepreneurs and build a startup and a product, but they definitely have, like the story of OpenAI, right? There were a team of researchers that actually had to build a product like ChatGPT to make it big, right? But it was not easy. It took them years to do that. We want to accelerate much more of that, and we have that type of expertise in-house to help. So Lunar Labs, you're gonna hear about that later on in the next few weeks and months. So yeah, keep in the loop with that.
Yeah, and for those people who just joined, there are some chairs on the side and maybe some here. I know some people are standing, so feel free to raise your hand if there's an empty seat next to you. So yeah, if you guys, please in the back, come forward. It's a small room. So I'm gonna give this to Martina because we have a very special virtual guest and she'll talk more about him.
Yeah, so this is my professor. His name is Andrew Aldrin. He is the son of Buzz Aldrin. And Buzz Aldrin did what? Do we know? Wait, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Yes, he was the second moonwalker. So my professor, Andrew Aldrin, is the president of Aldrin Family Foundation, and it's an organization that's dedicated to harness the inspiration of space and ignite passion for education in students of all ages, including kids. So he has served in leadership roles throughout his life, and he has overseen the extension of a lot of educational programs, over 300 elementary schools and universities. He's also the director of the ISU Center for Space Entrepreneurship at Florida Tech, where I studied his program. And he's the Associate Professor of Engineering and Management at Florida Tech. Now he's at Embry-Riddle as well, crafting and building a new program. So Andy is quite exceptional. He grew up in the space age and he's still crafting it internationally. He has a global presence. And we got in touch with him again for you guys. So we're gonna play that video.
This is Andy Aldrin. I am Director of Space Programs at Embry-Riddle University. I've been a space cadet for my entire life. I mean, literally since I was 6 years old. You all enlisted in space, so to speak. You all chose to be part of space. I got drafted when I was 6 years old. My dad was training to do a spacewalk, and he pioneered underwater training. So he had been scuba diving, but he started scuba diving a lot more. And so I was going to be his dive buddy. At 6 years old, he strapped a tank onto me, and I was his dive buddy as he was thinking about spacewalks. And for the next 60 years, we talked about space. Mostly I listened because my dad talks a lot and doesn't listen all that well. But yeah, for 60 years, I've been a space cadet in one way, shape, or form, growing up with my dad, working in research institutes, working in industry. And for about the last 10 years, I'm a space educator, and it's been the most rewarding part of my life. And the thing about being an educator is it forces you to think about stuff. And I think about a lot of different things in space. And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff. You know, the thing about Apollo was it was probably the largest space startup in history, because when these guys started, you know, they were 26, 27 years old. They were just walking into an organization that didn't have any boundaries. They had a clear goal. It was an audacious goal, and they did whatever they could to make things happen. And so, you know, one of the most incredible stories about the moon to me is, so the original architecture actually looked eerily like SpaceX's architecture to go to the moon right now. Von Braun had massive rockets that were going to send massive rockets to the moon, and it wasn't going to work. And there was a guy named John Houbolt, who wasn't really that senior of a guy at Langley Research Center in Virginia. It wasn't even like it used to be sort of really important research center back in the 20s and 30s. Wasn't all that important. So this guy wasn't a big dog engineer. He just had an idea. And his idea was, instead of sending a big rocket to the moon, what you do is actually send little stuff and something small that goes to the moon and comes back, and you actually rendezvous in lunar orbit instead of rendezvousing in Earth orbit. And that changed everything. And so he went to von Braun. Von Braun was literally a god of space. And he went to him, pitched this idea, and von Braun initially didn't really like it, but he came around pretty quickly. And that's an astonishing achievement, to have decisions coming up from the very bottom up to the top and it happening. That's the startup mentality. And that's what all of you are kind of growing up in. The other great entrepreneurship story I have is uh, I started my career as a Sovietologist. I studied the Soviet Union, but I was still pretty much a space cadet. So one of the questions, one of the passions I had was, how did the Soviet Union beat the United States into space? And it was a process of entrepreneurship. You had guys at the bottom, guys, there weren't too many women involved in this in Russia at the time, who before World War II were dreaming of going into space. And then World War II came, and a lot of these people got thrown, in fact, Korolev got thrown into prisons in Siberia, and spent a lot of time in Siberia, a lot of the war in Siberia, because Stalin thought they were enemies of the people because they were smart. And they still believed in space. And after the war, they got out and they got to Germany, and they started looking at what the Germans had done. And they said, this stuff is incredible. Stalin, the Soviet leadership, didn't really care about V2s and German rockets, but these guys did. And they brought it back to Russia, and nobody would take it. They didn't want to have anything to do with spacecraft. They wanted long-range bombers and all that. But these guys managed to work together. They were sitting in 6 different ministries, and they created a space program that the leadership didn't want. And they sold it. And then all of a sudden, when they launched Sputnik, it was a great moment that they called up Sergei Khrushchev, the premier at the time. And they said, we launched something into space. Isn't that great? Khrushchev said, you know, it's really late at night. You guys are great. See you later. Bye. And then, of course, the rest of the world went nuts. And from that point on, but they built a program from the bottom up. They were true entrepreneurs. Sergei Korolev was the world's first, and I'll say still the greatest space entrepreneur ever. And so, I mean, there are great stories from the history of space entrepreneurship. You aren't the first ones to do this, but all of you are the luckiest people and the luckiest space cadets in the world ever, because you're going to have the opportunity to do stuff that couldn't be done. You're all going to have the opportunity at some point in your career, I think, to apply for jobs on the moon, right? You all know that you're going to have the opportunity to fly in space. We've literally got kids in high schools building satellites. Think about that, building satellites today. And so this is the most exciting time in space ever. And you should be thankful just how fortunate you are. You should be excited too, because you all got great careers ahead of you. And I'm really, really, I'm excited for all of you. first of all, it's a great time to be in space. But not all space is great. There are parts of space that are really great. There are parts of space that aren't so great. We don't need to get in that much to some of the parts that I'm not. I am not a huge fan of launch. Launch is a really tough business. But I'll tell you what I am a fan of is geospatial. When I mean geospatial, I think about the big business that you're in, right? If you're in satellite communications, you're in SATCOM, but you're really in telecommunications, right? Because you're competing with fiber, you're competing with cellular and all that, and it's a tough competition. And satellites will lose that competition, which is one of the reasons I'm not in love with that. Why I am in love with space-based observation, space-based geospatial data is you can do things in space that you simply can't do anywhere else, and they must be done. Space will never get taken over by something else. You can't have enough drones around to do the things you need to do in space. So the data is all going to come from space. But that industry is going to change dramatically. It's going to change from, right now we've got a company that builds satellites and they're building their satellites and they're processing the data and then they're selling the data and they're selling just their data, whether it's hyperspectral, which is wonderful data, RF data, panchromatic, whatever. And they're just selling their single data stream. But we've got, last count, I think I had 70 different companies that are building EO platforms, selling basically any kind of data, but they're all selling it separately to their customers. And their customers are like farmers in the Amazon. And it's literally like some astronaut is descending from Silicon Valley with an iPad trying to sell somebody a farmer data, and the farmer looks like, dude, you just came from Mars as far as I'm concerned. And so that's going to change. That business is going to resegment. And I think the biggest driver of that change is probably going to be machine language, because what's going to happen is you've got all of these different sensors, different places, different times, different resolutions, dumping data into a data processor using artificial intelligence or whatever we're going to be calling it next year to process that data and do incredible things with it. But the amazing part of it is going to be the person on the ground that understands what the customer really needs and understands what the satellite can produce and understands what you can do with artificial intelligence to generate incredibly powerful products. But that segmentation is going to have to happen. And it's going to create incredible opportunities for all of you, particularly in the area of data processing, artificial intelligence, all that kind of stuff. And so that's where I get super excited. I mean, I think that's like, it's a $50 billion a year industry for the commercial side of it. The government side of it will continue to be, I mean, we spend something between 50 and $70 billion on geospatial in the government, and it's national security. So don't forget that. That is the big dog in that industry. But I think the commercial side of it is going to be driving the technology more than anything. I don't think the National Reconnaissance Office will ever be dependent upon commercial sources for their most strategic data, the stuff that they really use to blow up things. That I don't think they'll ever get comfortable with that. But I think and that's not to say working in the national security community isn't a horrible thing. I mean, I like the Space Force. It's a really exciting organization, but it is the military, and the military. I just spent 2 days in a workshop with military educators, and they're more concerned, frankly, about figuring out their own organization. But I think there are exciting technical things happening in that industry. I'm obviously an old guy. Some of my students call me the cosmic curmudgeon. I don't really know a whole lot about AI. You guys know about AI, but I do think about where the great applications are. And I already mentioned geospatial. I think that's easy. We know that's going to be great. One of the things that I think has potential and really kind of interesting potential for reshaping the industry is AI and engineering. And the way I think about it is, I teach a course in space systems management. It's actually, we do launch systems, a bunch of different things. But in doing that, we use a lot of cost models, because cost is obviously something which is very important. And you have to use parametric models. And so when you look at cost and what drives cost. For development of systems, there are two things that are important. One thing is the maturity of your design. So if you've got a design that's like generation 5 design, it's going to cost a lot less to do generation 6 than it was to do generation 1 because you've learned a lot. The other thing that's important is the experience of your team. These two things can drive down costs by more than 50%. Now, that is what AI does, right? It takes your level of knowledge from a first system to a fifth system if you've got good data. And it takes the experience level of your team from first year to 10th if you've got data. And so the question is for space companies, where is that data? And the interesting bit, and I say interesting kind of an academic sense, because it's just an interesting question to me, because I'm not working in industry. But for you all, like it may be interesting more in the Chinese sense that, may you live in interesting times. Here's the thing. Startup companies don't have the data, right? Black Sky, Spire, these companies have a track record of 2 or 3, 5, 10 years at the most. But you look at the legacy companies, and so they've been building stuff for decades. They got tons of data. So they can build they're capable, they've got the data to build really good models. Whereas the startups are going to be a little disadvantaged. They don't have that data. And so what's going to happen with that? And I mean, the startups are obviously dynamic and have, I think, much more aggressive innovation. And by the way, most of the innovation is on the managerial side, willingness to take risk. I mean, the major innovation of SpaceX and reusability wasn't reusability. We knew how to do that. We just thought you had to pull apart the whole engine to do it, and they didn't. The first time I went to I only went to one heavy launch where I actually got to see the boosters before they launched. We went into saw them there. The 2 outboard boosters, they didn't even clean them up. They're full of carbon. The innovation was just to say, let's do it again. Let's see what happens. And that took a lot of guts, but that's the major innovation. And I'm sure that Tom Mueller did lots of incredible things in designing engines that are capable of that. But you remember the RD-180 was supposed to be good for reusable. Nobody ever had the guts to launch it again. So that's the innovation. But I think what's going to happen, getting back to startup companies who have this innovative mindset, but they don't have the data. Now you could see some really interesting industry reorganizations because there are legacy companies that I could see getting out of the space business, particularly if a startup comes in and goes, you know what, we'll give you $100 billion for your database. I won't mention any companies, but as a shareholder in one of those companies, I'd have to look at it and go, I can take that deal. And then you may see that kind of really interesting industry reorganization in ways you never thought about AI driving the market. Yeah, so I think it's going to, aside from everything else, I just think you're going to see industry move in so many directions you hadn't even thought about. And a lot of the stuff you think about probably isn't going to happen. I've got 2 pieces of advice for you. I'm old enough that I ought to have more, but I'm going to make it 2. The first is follow your passion. If you see something that's cool that you want to do, particularly, I mean, you all have got the career space to do it. Go do something that's cool that you're passionate about. Because, I mean, space is a great place, but, and don't be afraid to move around. That's the first piece. Second piece of advice is it's the questions that are important. And ask hard questions and don't settle for rubbish as an answer. I mean, question everything. It is a good thing because particularly as you're growing up in an AI world, I believe firmly that it's artificial stupidity if you ask it the wrong question. It's not intelligence. And you will always be the source of intelligence for artificial intelligence. And don't forget that. The important thing is you got to know the right questions. And I think AI is going to liberate you all to do thinking rather than grinding on data or code or whatever. And that's going to be really exciting. So have fun.
We're so thankful to Andy. I mean, he grew up in the space age and now he's still monitoring the global space development, so he has a plethora of knowledge, and we're hoping he'll be here in person next year. But up next, we have Dr. Harry Partridge. He is the Ames Center Chief Technologist, or the CCT at NASA Ames. And he identifies, defines, develops, and integrates new and emerging technologies for application for agency and also national goals through the NASA Space Technology Mission Directorate, or the STMD. Harry reports to the center management and serves as the principal advisor to the center leadership on matters concerning center-wide technology development and leverage. His duties include representation on the agency-wide Center Chief Technologist Council and management of the Center Innovation Fund. He's also my SpaceUp's boss. I report to him, and we'll have him shortly on here.
He's online, so we can actually do live Q&A.
Yeah, we can ask him questions or anything that might interest you.
Yeah, maybe think about a question I'd like to ask.
Hey Harry, hi. So we have a full room here of the audience. If you can quickly first introduce yourself, I'll ask you a question or two myself, and then we'll open the floor for a Q&A.
Hey, I'm Harry Partridge. I'm the Chief Technologist at NASA Ames. I do live in Colorado Springs, so sorry I can't be there. The Space App Challenge is going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to it next weekend.
So you're gonna be in person with us, and since we're talking about space and AI, I personally wanted to ask you, what do you think are the biggest advancements currently happening in space and AI? What's your advice on that? Do you have anything to share with us that you know of?
Well, autonomy for space exploration is going to become critical. Everywhere from right now, they drive a kilometer a year or something, and we're going to need to drive a lot further than that. There's a lot of work in that area. Going to Mars is a long way. It's about a 3-year trip. There's no, you can't get help if you need it. There's no rescues. There's no resupply. So you have to bring everything with you. If you look at one of the probably critical technologies we need is how you maintain that system. Anomalies happen fairly regularly. Most of 40% of them or so are things that weren't predicted by designers. You're going to have a very small crew. You're going to be way remote from Earth. 40 to an hour and a half for round trip communications. So the whole thing's going to be need to be autonomous. It's going to need autonomy. It's going to need to be reliable, and survivability of a crew to Mars is probably can't happen without it. So autonomy is going to be very important.
Thank you so much. And just you observing SpaceUp's, the NASA Space Challenge happening next weekend, what do you think participants can expect based on challenges, solutions, ideas? How do you find the hackathon?
I've enjoyed the hackathon. This will be the 4th year I think that I've been involved. You get to use open data, so it's a NASA-sponsored event. It's a large event with 200 venues, tens of thousands of participants. Open data is sort of revolutionizing the way certain science is done. The data is available. Experiments are expensive, so letting people work on the data as soon as it's feasible really accelerates the development. So this event is everywhere from middle school students to professionals. It's a wide variety of areas. You get a lot of data. There are a lot of people interested in what you're doing and what you say. And it's really surprising or encouraging to see what people can come up with all this data. So.
We have quite a diverse talent pool here, so I'm gonna open the floor to a few questions. I believe we should have time for several. And Joaquin will pass along the mic, and I can repeat in case you didn't make that.
Yeah, must you raise your hand if you want to.
If you have any questions for Harry, we're here for you guys.
It could be beyond AI.
I can make a question as you think about something. Hi, Harry, this is Joaquin. My question is, if I'm an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley building a startup in the space industry, and I think that NASA is definitely one of my potential clients or customers, what do you think is the best approach? What should I do to really have NASA or any big organization hear me out about what I think I can do for them?
The commercial space startup field is booming. I mean, I got to help select the current round in Techstars, and I mean, they had 200 companies apply for it, so it was really quite exciting to see with the breadth and the range of things that we're doing. Interacting directly with NASA for a startup, I mean, collaborations always work, and then there's the SBIR, STTR approach to get your initial funding to help get you started.
Thank you.
We have a question.
Hi, so this is Simran. I actually was studying in the NASA Ames campus as a part of Carnegie Mellon University. So yeah, very excited that I'll be in hackathon and go to my campus again. Question, with the advent of Gen AI, how do you see the startup space or like innovation in the space area progressing in the last couple of years? What challenges have been mitigated, and where do you see the opportunity now?
There are a lot of opportunities. I see a lot of pitch decks at the moment in computing, edge computing, data storage, communications, AI for interpreting data, cybersecurity. I mean, most of them have been small, low Earth orbit applications. There are still some propulsion. There's some launch startups that are still, there are people trying to bring manufacturing to orbit and bring things back to Earth. So I think you're even starting to see startups starting to bring things back from the moons.
We have another question. Thank you.
Hi there. So I'm a grant writing professional, and I was asked a question kind of similar to this, but I was actually really curious to hear what your answer would be. If you're applying for a grant like an SBIR, how would you recommend an applicant stand out?
So agencies are different. So for instance, there are some agencies that you almost have to call the program manager before you write the proposal. Whereas for NASA, you can't, once the solicitation comes out, you can't really talk to anybody. You just have to write the proposal. So if you're writing, particularly for NSF, I would talk to the program managers. If you're writing for NASA, I would look at the shortfall list and understand what is motivating the topic, and then try to address that. A well-written proposal that's technically sound usually does pretty well.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time for 2 more questions, Harry. So we are waiting for raised hands in the audience.
Don't be shy.
Hey Harry, I have a question. So, assuming we talk a lot about innovation and collaborating with startup, in your opinion, having a startup, how easy or hard is it to collaborate with an organization the scale of NASA?
So it's not as easy as I would like it to be. There are several mechanisms besides SBIR, and STTR that are possible. NASA does things called ACO, which basically lets you, if you have an idea, you can test it. You can use NASA facilities to develop that technology. There are tipping point where things that are getting close that are usually a little higher TRL. Working with universities to identify what they are, what we're looking for is also helpful. Space Force and the Air Force in particular are really aggressive right now in the space market, particularly low Earth orbit, but they actually have a real strong envisioned future for sustained operation on the moon. So that whole DoD connection is also quite interesting. Some things that also you can help is you can reach out. Each of the centers has a chief technologist. You can reach out to the center chief technologist and use that as a way to get contacts with people so that you know what they want. Unfortunately, again, you can't talk to people once there's a solicitation out. So.
Thank you so much. And we have, I think, 2 more questions. Oh, we can have 3. Perfect. Yeah.
This one, that side.
Yeah, sure.
And I'll get to the last.
Hi Harry, thanks so much for speaking with us today. It's such a privilege to be able to hear your thoughts. So as someone who's always been really passionate about space but doesn't necessarily have the educational background, would you say someone who is interested in collaborating with NASA and getting to space tech, do I need to have the educational background in space in order to, come into this frontier? Or would you say it's anyone who's passionate about space and wants to learn it's a good opportunity for them?
So NASA has, it's a large organization and it has a huge breadth of needs everywhere from people who work overseas for diplomatic to education to educators. There's a lot. So the interest and passion for space is important. Unfortunately, the job market right now in NASA is not looking so good, but hopefully we'll get better pretty soon. If we're going to go to Mars, if you look at the challenges for going to the moon or to Mars, they're really quite substantial. There's a lot of technical challenges.
Good afternoon, Harry. Thank you for being here today. I have 2 short questions. The first one, has NASA R&D been affected by recent government spending cuts? And the second question is, what is the either national security or economic strategy behind attempts to go to Mars?
So have we been affected? And to the extent that the president's budget's been released and we've sort of been told to operate in that direction, so some things are being rolled down. No one knows what our budget will be in 26 or 27. The current House and Senate bills have a budget that's much more robust than the president's budget, but we don't know how that would play out because we're still expecting the 27 president's budget to be quite restricted also. So the moon is a real political, people are worried about if somebody occupies the moon, what part of the moon can they go? Can they block access to it? For instance, there's a lot of things you can do on the backside of the moon, and the US has never landed there, China has. Is that an issue for us? People have talked about building huge radio telescopes on the backside of the moon. Space Force, DoD has a strong interest in sustained presence, but the law is written that NASA has to take the lead on anything to do with going to the moon. So if you look at some of the stuff that DARPA's doing, they're doing supporting technologies, but they're not actually going to the moon. Moon is, I mean, what we do when we get to the moon is still, I mean, you hear all sorts of stories. Can we live there for a long time? There's no carbon on the moon, so raising crops is going to be an issue. Going to Mars is, in my opinion, is still technically a ways away for us.
Thank you so much, Harry. And I think we have the last two questions.
So I get this one.
Hello, my name is Jonathan. I'm currently studying computer science. So my question is, what would you recommend if you want to work in space? What advice would you give to students who want to work towards space? Like, is there any habit or something that we should have advice on working?
Computer science is broad, so I mean, programming, if you look at I'll just start off with programming. If you look at the number of lines of code for many of these missions, there are millions of lines of code. We don't do very many of them, so how do you debug them? How do you get them operational? How do you certify them? So for everywhere from software for space, to bringing data back, to communications, to prognostics and anomaly detection, to response. I mean, there's just so many areas that computer science is directly involved in space exploration.
Thank you so much, Harry. We have one last question, and thank you so much for your time.
It's related to AI robotics. Maybe if we're gonna have humanoids in the next 2 to 5 years, maybe, why are we not planning to send them instead of humans? I'm getting a little bit, Dario Amonde from Anthropic recently said that maybe white-collar jobs might be at risk. So yeah, what about astronauts, human astronauts? I think they might be at risk too.
So the balance between robotic exploration and crewed missions has been a subject of discussion for, I don't know, since I joined NASA 40 some odd years ago. And there's a lot that we can do robotically, but if you look at our ability to make decisions and know what to do, there are still challenges. And so I think robotic missions are very important. If you look at what we've done with robotics on Mars, I think we've made fantastic discoveries. There are many, many more discoveries to come. I think we need more of them. And even if you do a crewed mission, I don't believe we can do it without robotics. How are you going to assemble a habitat? I mean, say that you land on Mars, okay? In current vision of at least one of the major rocket companies is to use supersonic retropropulsion to land. Well, the reason for Mars sample return use the sky crane is the retropropulsion digs a trench, and then you can't be certain that the rover can even get out of the trench that you dug. So our closest we've landed to our predicted landing is 1 kilometer, with the landing ellipse on the order 20 kilometers. They're working to get that smaller, but are you going to be able to land within 1 kilometer of your habitat that you've pre-deployed? And how long is it going to take us to get there? I mean, we're going to need robots to make landing pads, to make berms, to install things, to make habitats. We need robots everywhere. So robots are going to be important, and robotic missions are very important to NASA.
Thank you everyone for the lovely questions and the incredible discussion. And a round of applause for Harry. Thank you so much, Harry, for your time. Really enjoyed speaking with you today. I'll pass it to Baxter.
Yeah, so we're just going to quickly do a quick switch of the slides. We have one video from an entrepreneur that we would like to highlight and kind of go forward from there, and we'll have networking opportunity. We have this space until 5:45, but we have to leave at 6. So giving us more time. And I'd like to introduce Rama Fulo, who used to work for Google actually, and he helped NASA Space Apps in terms of mentorship. And so if you're from a corporation, feel free to reach out to us. We're looking for mentors for students and all the hackathon folks. And he was so amazed with the event that he decided to create his own space company here in Silicon Valley. And so I'm just gonna quickly do a quick video, and we'll let you guys do.
My name is Rama Ochieng Afulo. I am the founder and CEO of Satellite, and we network satellites in space using software by uplinking one line of code onto your satellite and help you monetize your excess compute capacity in space. In terms of my background, I'm Kenyan-born. I've born and raised in Kenya, Botswana, and South Africa. Thereafter, I lived in the Netherlands and in Ireland before moving to the US just over 4 years ago. I'm a mechanical engineer and a space systems engineer, and I worked across Tesla, Google, and SpaceX over the last decade or so. I think just before starting my startup. And the startup really is an amalgamation of these three different companies and the work that I did at them. At SpaceX, I was in the energy products division looking at telecoms and sort of replacing diesel gensets with lithium-ion batteries, the Tesla Powerwall. At Google, I worked in ad sales and then in cloud engineering. And I think the cloud side of, what we do ends up really being at the intersection of space, AI, and the cloud. And then finally at SpaceX, I was working as a product manager for Starlink. And while there, of course, like direct implication there in terms of being the space technology business and finding ways to monetize that and turn that into a real business as well. So I did that for a while, and that I think has led me to what we're building today at Satellite. Our first customer really is the satellite operators, so folks who own the satellites and space agencies and governments and the like. Right, so we've got a direct partnership with NASA. Is one of the STTR grant winners this year, one of the 47, and with a bunch of other space agencies. And then we've also got partnerships with commercial satellite operators. I think, first of all, what we want to be able to do is to reduce the amount of data that comes down from satellites down to the ground by a significant amount, right? When up to 90%. Right, and that helps folks to start thinking about space-to-space communications in a different way, right? Like where you can use this sort of hive mind, this distributed brain, right, to solve problems in space without having to send them down, right? That changes how folks think about like what we do in space, right? And then how we actually send the data down as well. We can use other satellites within this network as a relay. So I think there's a good analogy for what we're doing. Like you said, we're the above cloud service provider. So like it's similar to doing what Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure are doing, right? And so instead of having all your data sit on the satellite and then get sent down, you are now allowing this data to be dispersed among a whole bunch of other satellites compared to what Google does with a whole bunch of other data centers, where your sort of data is sent to, right? And then in the end as well, with a bunch of the folks who are putting up larger and larger hardware into space and building out new space stations and new data centers in space, etc., we end up being a controlling node, right? Well, a controlling sort of application layer that controls the way these nodes interact with each other, right? And eventually, we'll get to a point where the amount of data being processed here on Earth is like way too much for the ROI of terrible water quality and just really bad pollution for folks here on Earth. So instead, what we end up doing is moving a lot of that over to space, right? As the sort of cost of launch, the cost of putting things in space decreases significantly. And of course, at Satellite, we want to be that software layer that enables the entire ecosystem. I just signed our contract with NASA yesterday, so that's moving forward. We're talking to a bunch of different space agencies out there, Luxembourg, Saudi Arabia, etc., you name it, right? But I think in the developing markets, like I think that, so like I mentioned, I'm Kenyan, right, originally, and in the development markets, we have a lot of folks who want some sort of space sovereignty, want to be involved in the space ecosystem, don't know how. It's very capex intensive, can be very expensive for a lot of folks to own their own satellites in space and to operate them themselves. But they do want to be able to access space in some capacity, right? So Kenya has, I think, 3 satellites, 2 or 3 or so, right? But other African countries, I believe only 19 of the 54 African nations have their own satellites, right? And of course, Africa is the continent with the most countries, right? So it's got a lot of different folks out there who this might not be the #1 priority, right? But harnessing that data is going to be super crucial for a lot of people. So what we end up doing is creating a way for folks, even on the ground, to be able to access and task satellites in ways that they hadn't previously thought of before. I think that the way the experiences I've been really lucky to have has shaped the way I look at things in terms of, asking whether or not something is possible is probably a good idea, right? But for the most part, I've built and I've seen things that other folks thought would never happen, wouldn't be possible, you couldn't do, and then done it. And doing that under the guise of like companies that have already made it is a lot easier, right? I'd say. Right now, doing it with a company that hasn't made it yet, we're a 1-year-old startup, right? It's very different. So I think my views have been shaped by a lot of that, by how like having lived in 6 different countries and 3 continents, right? That definitely changes your perspective. You grow to quickly realize that humans from all parts and walks of the earth will annoy you just the same, right? So that's definitely something that I think for me is top of mind. It's like, the way I view life and view a lot of experiences has been shaped by my personal experiences, and hopefully I can help folks who maybe don't see that sort of thing, or don't have that sort of exposure to look at life differently. And one thing I would love to experience at some point in my life is the overview effect of, being in space and looking down and realizing that, hey, we are really dumb to be fighting the way we are, because it's one connected mass of humans just deciding to fight amongst ourselves. And maybe at the same time, I look up and I see like aliens coming for us. I'm like, well, that's going to unify us, right? Anyways, I mean, Google's doing already, right? They've got Firesat. They've got so I think that's a collaboration with Moore on Space and a bunch of other folks to like look at wildfire detection, right? And Google's been very involved. They bought Skybox for $500 million like 10 years ago or something. Right, so they've been looking at this. I know they're interested in data centers in space. We were part of the Google AI Academy for American Infrastructure, one of only 17 startups. And in the previous cohort as well, they had another space data center company as part of that cohort. So there's clear interest, right, from the Google folks in terms of what we're building and how we should go about doing things. I think some of the other folks as well. I mean, Amazon is deeply invested. Like they're working with different folks. Like they've got the Amazon Ground Station, and they're doing what they can in that regard. Microsoft Azure Space, I haven't heard too much from them of late, so I don't know if they're still actually super active or not. I think that what folks are doing right now is the right path. I expect that at some point, some of these large hyperscaler, large cloud service providers will actually start using what we're doing as a potential above cloud region, right? And I think that is the way to start thinking about, like, so how do we look at space-to-space comms, and how do we service that, and then how do we also tap into the space ecosystem to help us out in terms of what we're doing here on Earth. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting in China because, like, a lot of the things that were used as impediments to them has actually helped accelerate a lot of things for them, right? Like here in the US, we've got ITAR arms regulations and EAR arms regulations that are like focused on like making sure that, like, there's export controls for anything that's space related that could be potentially part of the military or militarized, or etc. Some of these folks out there, like China, they don't have those rules, right? And those regulations actually end up propelling them forward, right? Like they've got bunch of folks looking at distributed networks and actually already doing it, already building it out, right, in orbit, right? I've got to go through the FCC, ITU, et cetera, a whole bunch of three-letter organizations, right, to figure out if things are even a possibility. Like, much easier for me to register a company here for sure, but I think there's definitely things out there that we could do a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, props to some of these folks out there, right, like from outside the US, who are able to go about doing a bunch of things like really quickly, are putting the pedal to the metal, and it's put some stress on people here. There's a critical window of which we need to be able to do this. I think SpaceX is consolidating power. They're buying up spectrum, right? And they are a vertically integrated closed ecosystem. We need a counterweight to what they're doing, and that counterweight is very simple. We find ways to create an Android equivalent to SpaceX's iPhone, right? And with that, we end up being the marketplace. We own their app store, right? And folks can build freely in an open way, like by connecting and uplinking our software onto their satellites, right? But as a result of that as well, as a result of that, they can monetize the excess capacity. They can sell into other satellites that are within this network, right? And ends up being sort of this distributed brain that can work across the ecosystem, and it's a brain that we we own. For folks who want to build something in space, the very best way to do that is to start, right? There's never been an easier time to build, but also there have never been high expectations of what it is that you end up building. I think that it's fairly easy for people to make a decision to go build some ChatGPT wrapper in the fintech space, or to build another Lovable or Bolt or Replit clone or whatever it might be, like go vibe code a vibe coding app, right? I think that's what a lot of people are aiming for, because they want to sell some shovels. But I think that in the space ecosystem, there's lots of opportunity. There's lots that we can do within the space AI and cloud connector as well. And I hope that folks go about doing it. And if you're interested as well, firstly, if you want to work somewhere that is actually pushing this, feel free to reach out to me. If you are interested in deep diving a little bit more in terms of my journey, or asking me some questions in terms of some of your ideas, also feel free to reach out to me. But at the end of the day, I think every day is a gift, and what we do about addressing the gifts that we've been given is the only prerogative we have on a daily basis. And I hope you all just go after it, because space is hard, but space is also super rewarding.
I know it's virtual, but applause for Rama. Anyways, thank you. I myself am a researcher. I have a background in material engineering and manufacturing, and I also ended up here in the Bay Area, in the intertwined between space and tech, and I'm loving it. So yeah, it doesn't matter from where you come from. It doesn't matter how much you know or how little you know about space. We do invite you to join us next weekend at the NASA Space Up Challenge. Just type spaceupchallenge.com and type the Mountain Dew location, and you can join us at NASA Ames. Usually, internationals can't tour the center, but we partner with NASA Ames every year to have internationals on board as well at the Ames Ballroom. So you're welcome to come from all career paths and from all experience levels.
Yeah, I just want to mention that after hearing Patrick and Andy and Rama, I think the theme that I took from that is that there's no better time to build things. Just in this room, you have startup founders, you have people working on big tech, enterprise. Just in the next 30, 45 minutes, talk to them, share your stories. I think it's amazing. And if you want to continue building, you can come, join. Maybe you don't build anything yourself, but definitely meet amazing people. Just use those opportunities.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you very much for coming. International Space Alliance is actually a Google for nonprofit company. And we do rely on donations for organizations and companies as well. So if you have a corporate program with Benefity, whenever you donate, your company matches it. So that's something that we would love to do. our goal is really to help the students, the STEM researchers, eventually as we grow our organization, as we partner more with NASA, as you probably have heard with Rama, he's getting contracts from them, working with different space agencies. Coming from someone who worked in the NASA side, it is very difficult, but with amazing young entrepreneurs or young innovators right here in this space, we need to change that. NASA itself is a very old school world. So you really need to go know someone to get inside. But our goal for ESA itself in Silicon Valley is to open that floodgates as what AI is now doing in Silicon Valley. So like I said, the Berkeley Space Center is going to be the largest space research facility in North America. We're happy to be part of that ecosystem. We're still, in the early stage. It's probably going to take 10 years to finish that. But as we build that, we're creating this ecosystem with ESA, and we're going to build it with you all. Thank you. Feel free to network and talk to each other. This is a perfect opportunity.